Hello YouTube and Carter Cutlery fans. A really quick explanation about edges. Let's compare Western kitchen knife edges with Japanese edges. Generally speaking, you're going to find on a Western style kitchen knife that looks like this, that the amount of steel near that primary edge, which is the edge that initiates the cut, is quite heavy and quite thick, very thick in cross section. In fact, you can feel by bringing your fingers down the blade, you can kind of feel how much thickness is still down there. And this is based on a lowest common denominator approach. You know, they don't want that edge to chip out or to fail, even when the most clumsy user uses it. So the knife is basically a little bit overbuilt, and there's more steel, more meat near that edge than there needs to be. Conversely, the Japanese blades are going to be extremely thin towards the cutting edge. So thin, in fact, that a little bit of abuse on that edge will result in the edge chipping out. So what are the pros and cons of those different approaches? The Japanese, super thin, the edge might chip if it's used aggressively, and the Western blade, where there's more steel down there than really needs to be, so it's a durable edge. Well, no one has ever complained that these Western style blades cut too well. The common complaint is that they don't cut very well at all unless you significantly thin the blade down, especially down here where I'm pointing with my fingers near that primary edge. It takes a long time to thin that down. In fact, a lot longer than it takes to adjust a Japanese thin blade if it should happen to chip out. So the pros here is a strong, durable edge. The cons are it doesn't cut that well, and in order to get it to cut real well, you pretty much need to reduce it by 50% of its thickness to get it so it'll cut through things smoothly. So the Japanese blade, on the other hand, being thin and it can chip out, well, what happens if it does chip out? Well, if you look at my other link, How to Fix Chipped Blades, you'll see that with just a little bit of work, a little bit of elbow grease, and a good set of stones, you can get the chips out of the edges very well. But what you have is, if you start out with a super thin edge and super thin right behind the primary edge, and somebody's using that blade for some cutting task, if they start to detect or see any kind of edge damage, they can immediately go to a sharpening stone and grind a little bit of steel off of that primary edge and grind back just up into a slightly thicker metal, and now that blade and that edge in that blade will no longer get damaged or chip from the same cutting task again for that person. So with a very little effort, the user of that knife can reach a state of equilibrium where they've got the thinnest edge possible for the task at hand, but it'll still withstand repeated use / slight abuse. So the pros here is that it's a very easy to self-regulate the thickness of this blade with very little amount of time. But on the other hand, the blades are delivered super thin. So, my argument is that these blades are superior because in a shorter amount of time, you can reach the perfect thickness of blade for whatever your cutting task is, versus a blade like this that takes a long time to thin the steel down on. So I much prefer the Japanese style of blade geometry. If these are the little tidbits of information that you value and enjoy, be sure to subscribe to Carter Cutlery's channel. And every time we put out a new little informative video, you'll be the first to know. This is Murray Carter from Carter Cutlery, saying stay sharp and God bless you.